Of course, we've had the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, so this is an unprecedented leadership rupture.
There are two parts of it. One part is who will replace the regime. The other part is who will take over the illicit economy. I think that is the most powerful part.
The big economic and financial mafias inside Iran want this regime of sanctions to remain because they benefit from this economically and politically.
A deliberate system and institutionalization of illicit markets as tools of state power.
This illicit economies, this will create a civil war, first of all, within Iran. This is my forecast, my assessment.
So over the weekend, after months of stalled diplomacy and a US deadline on negotiation coming to an end, the US and Israel shifted from coercive signaling into more direct military action. So we've seen US and Israeli strikes on Iranian leadership, on IRGC senior figures, command nodes, air defense sites, missile infrastructure, and regime symbols. Of course, we've had the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, confirmed killed almost 12 hours after the bombing campaign started, and also senior IRGC figures and clerical figures as well. So this is an unprecedented leadership rupture. The response has been immediate, with Iran launching missile strikes across the region. We've had Qatar, Bahrain, the UAE and Oman hit, and also we've had Hezbollah and Israel exchanging fire. There's been fatalities, US fatalities. The Strait of Hormuz have been closed, and also we've had lethal violence in Karachi with Shia protests against the US consulate in Karachi. So almost straight away, the transition from a sort of calibrated negotiation into open warfare has introduced fog, friction, and a loss of control by all states involved. So state proxy and criminal systems are now out of control. So Iran has boosted revenue using its illicit economies in the past, and we expect that this will continue. It's important to point out that the illicit economies are not side effects of sanctions, they may have started from that, but they have become entrenched, a deliberate system and institutionalization of illicit markets as tools of state power. So a proxy for state power. We've got oil smuggling and sanctions evasion, narcotics trafficking, the smuggling of weapons and military goods, illicit finance and money laundering, human exploitation.
It's a kind of obligation as well. It's not something that they would have liked to do, but the sanctions that Iran is facing, it's one of the worst that in the history of economic sanctions that has been put on a country. And the sanctions, unfortunately, produces corruption. So illicit economic is a normal output, unfortunately, of this context for buying the country's need, for actually defending the cause of the regime's existence, and for surviving actually the illicit economy.
Illicit economies, it's not very easy to define in Iran. It's not very easy. The reasons are there that they have to support, to protect the revolution, they have to support, to supply, smuggle, and do everything they can to have independent source of funding which are not being tackled, monitored, and come under the radar of either the Iranian system or any international system.
They try to build companies in Iraq, in Lebanon, in UAE, very small companies. They register it, and these companies with the foreign national Iraqi passport or Lebanese passport or UAE passport, so they are not Iranians, so that they can bypass the channel of sanctions. And by this kind of situation, they try to work with the financial organizations. When you talk about the shadow fleet, the first name which comes to my mind is Ali Shamkhani, which was killed So the fleet, which was in the news, was the fleet of his family, that they have plenty of ships and they do a kind of oil transferring and oil business. But once again, when you put sanctions on a nation, that's so hard sanctions, the government and the establishment for surviving and being able to continue to rule the country, they try to build parallel fleets. So I think Iran is today one of the most experienced countries in this field. And it's not only Champagne is one that has become famous because of media. We have plenty of people that wrote very simple names that we may even don't know, but behind them, or companies behind them that may have branches in London, Paris, or in Berlin, and Switzerland, that they are running this kind of fleets.
We've got heroin being moved through Hezbollah-linked networks. They're involved in trafficking and also in the wholesale distribution into Europe and West Africa. This generates hard currency for the regime. Methamphetamine as well. We've got methamphetamine produced inside Iran in Sistan-Baluchestan, and that's linked to the Afghanistan production, which then gets shipped through Iran into Turkey and from there on into Europe and elsewhere. And then, of course, we've got the captagon trade, manufacturing and movement through Hezbollah-controlled logistics corridors in Syria and Lebanon. The weapons movement overseen by an institution within the regime, the Quds Force, Unit 190, which coordinates procurement, transport, and handover of the weapons and dual-use goods to proxies. The criminal smuggling networks, the drug smuggling and people movement networks, either maritime or on land, are used to move the weapons and to supply the proxy forces, Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen, for example. Maritime shipments are disguised as commercial cargo moving through the Gulf and the Red Sea, overland corridors through Iraq and Syria using militia-controlled territory, so allied militias. And then we've got these modular supply chains. Drone parts are shipped separately, then assembled locally by Hezbollah or Iraqi militias. It's not just drones, of course, that's also ballistic missile components. So we've got the sharing of the logistics networks to overwhelm enforcement capacity and overwhelm monitoring capacity. But it's important to stress that this is not just a sanctions evasion mechanism. This is a use of illicit economies to further state ends. They use these non-ideological criminal groups to perform tasks that the state wants. They're not loyal proxies, they're more sort of service providers. Then engagement with the Dubai super cartel ecosystem, the sort of ecosystem of illicit trade, sanction evasion, organized crime, all overlapping through criminal brokers in Dubai. Iran now uses criminal intermediaries to target dissidents and opponents overseas. And we expect that the current conflict could see an expansion of that methodology. So contracting criminal figures in Europe and North America, for example, both for surveillance and assassination plots. They also use biker gangs, Eurasian organized crime figures, and non-Iranian hitmen. We get the repeated appearance of this Zindashti network as a facilitator. And this is sort of assassination treated as a criminal service market, not a classic intelligence operation. The ongoing conflict at the moment will destabilise the illicit economy. How that happens is almost impossible to predict, but some ideas. So the smuggling routes will be damaged. The Straits of Hormuz are closed. The maritime routes will be impacted. The land routes will also be impacted. The use of bombing raids by the Israelis and the US, and of course the counter impact of Iranian missiles flying over will mean that land routes will also be disrupted. What will the second order impact be? Well, shortages, price spikes in oil, drugs, weapons. We are likely to see some of the groups gaining more autonomy as direct control from the Iranian state reduces, central oversight weakens. We could see militias pursuing self-financing criminal activity, so command over the proxies will erode. Therefore, you're more likely to see miscalculation, you're more likely to see opportunism, and you're more likely to see intra-network violence.
The categories of illicit economy, in my view, it's not only smuggling of heroin, it's beyond that. It's buying nationalities, for example, staying in other countries, using all kind of channels to take the money. This illicit economies, this will create a civil war, first of all, within Iran. This is my forecast, my assessment. Whenever there are major countries giving guarantees that, okay, surrender, we will guarantee you your security of your network, your structures, help us to stabilize Iran. It will exactly start with the civil war. But illicit economy has such a wider chemical impact that it can create thousands of pockets of violence and thousands of pockets of control, transformation, terrorism, and threat to the national security of dozens of countries. The United States and Israel and all other allies, Britain and all other countries should look beyond the conflict. There are two parts of it. One part is who will replace the regime. The other part is who will take over the illicit economy. I think that is the most powerful part. There is one part which is supporting vertical arms through ideological framework. There is another part which are holding that instrument which has tangibility.
So if we see a regime that emerges in Iran that follows the same religious doctrine, then what we're likely to see is a tightening of control after a period of destabilization. And that tightening of control could see more direct revenue generation, a direction to expand operations to get hard currency. So drug smuggling could increase, the taps could be opened. The taps could also be opened on the irregular migration routes. The taps will almost certainly be opened on weapons smuggling to the Houthis, to Hezbollah, to other proxy militias in Iraq. And therefore, the prospect for these irregular networks to be leveraged as tools of statecraft, as weaponized tools of statecraft, increases in the future.
One of the main problems is that there is no knowledge and there's no understanding between both sides. This Trump administration, they don't have any understanding of how the mind of Iranian leaders work in decision making. And this is the same in the Iranian establishment. The majority don't have any clue of how the Western mind and paradigm works and the process. And as long as we don't understand this between the both sides, there will not be something deep and lasting between Iran and the West. So the first thing is trying to understand the minds of each side.